Chapter 321. The remaining three Wei family masters were so frightened that they hurriedly knelt on the ground, their bodies shaking like sieves. They know that the Wei family is really ruthless. Zhang Lanfeng is in charge of the Wei family, not Wei Kunan. You take good care of the master, don't worry about other things. Zhang Lanfeng glanced at Wei Kunan, who was pale, then turned around and walked out. After going out, Zhang Lanfeng called his younger brother Zhang Wenji directly. It seems that this matter can only be done by the Zhang family, and relying on the Wei family, I am afraid that there is no revenge at all. After Zhang Wenji received the call, he rushed to Wei's house without stopping. Looking at Wei Dao lying on the bed, Zhang Wenji said angrily, "Sister, who beat Xiao Dao like this? Why didn't you tell me?" "Uncle, you want to avenge me, it's David, he's the one who ruined me, and I'll be a lame man from now on." Seeing Zhang Wenji coming, Wei Dao burst into tears. Zhang Wenji is only a few years older than Wei Dao, and the two have been playing together since childhood. "Uncle, and that Sonia, it's all because of him that David broke my leg. I want you to catch her too, I want to vent my anger," Wei Dao said hurriedly. "No problem, it's all wrapped up on my uncle." Zhang Wenji patted his shoulder and said, "Xiaoji, don't make a fool of yourself, don't listen to him, then Sonia is the daughter of Reuben, the richest man in Horrendal. If we arrest her, Reuben will definitely make trouble, we just need to arrest the person who abolished Xiao Tao, don't grow branches outside the festival." Zhang Lanfeng persuaded Zhang Wenji. "Sister, don't worry about it, what is the richest man in Horrendal? It's an honor for our family Xiao Tao to see his daughter." Zhang Wenji didn't care, and left after asking Wei Dao about the situation. Zhang Lanfeng didn't say anything either, her son is like this, let's be self-willed. I don't know if it is this idea that made the entire Wei family go down the road of destruction. In Yeonchang, David was still trying his best to refine Xiao Huandan in the room. He didn't even know that the Wei family came to target him again. Even if he knew, he wouldn't care. It only took one day and one night for David to refine 100 small returning pills. While David was refining the small returning pills, Lin Tianyu was guarding outside, while the bored Sonia went to the sisters Ji Yu Yufei and Ji Yu Yao. "Lin Tianyu, Sonia hasn't come back yet." Looking at the darkened sky outside the window, David asked Lin Tianyu. "Mr. Chen, Miss Su called and said that she was coming back after dinner. She was with the Ji Yu sisters." Lin Tianyu replied. "Yeah." David nodded. After all, several people hadn't seen each other for many years, and it was normal to meet and play together more often. When David was about to take Lin Tianyu to dinner, suddenly the phone rang. Taking out his mobile phone and seeing that the call was from Ji Yu Wenshan, David felt a little strange. After all, Ji Yu Wenshan rarely contacted David directly. After answering the phone, Ji Yu Wenshan's anxious voice came from the opposite side. "Mr. Chen, something has happened, something has happened." When David heard this, his body trembled slightly. "Ancient, what happened? Speak slowly." "Lei Mingguan, something happened to Lei Mingguan, come back soon." Ji Yu Wenshan's voice trembled, with a bit of panic. "Okay, I'll go back right away." David's face turned cold, and he hung up the phone. "Mr. Chen, what happened?" Lin Tianyu asked when he saw that David's face was wrong. "It's true that something happened to the Taoist, I'll go back and take a look, you are here to guard Sonia, don't let her be in danger." As David said, he went back to his room and sorted his clothes. Chapter 322. "Do you want me to go back with you?" Lin Tianyu asked. "No, you remember, you must protect Sonia, I don't think the Wei family will give up so easily." After David finished speaking, he picked up his jacket and ran out. The car was galloping fast, and the chill on David's body was getting stronger and stronger. Xiaoru is a rare body of ice crystals. If she can step into the world of immortals, her future strength must not be underestimated. It's just that David's strength is not enough to introduce Xiaoru into the world of immortality, so he can only transform her body so that she can benefit from it, so David did not rashly help Xiaoru transform her body, but went to help Xiaoru absorb it after a while. A body chill. After all, this kind of physique is too rare, but now that something happened to Lei Mingguan, David began to worry about Xiaoru's safety. Although Xiaoru has an ice crystal body, she can't control the coldness of her body at all, just like an ordinary girl. If you encounter danger, there is no power to parry. Thinking of this, David speeded up again, and the car was like a cannonball, rushing towards the Thunder View. When David arrived at the foot of Laming Mountain, it was already late at night, the sky was pitch black, there was no light, it was very depressed, it looked like it was going to rain. Putting the car at the foot of the mountain, David quickly swept towards the top of the mountain. David, who has practiced Qi for the 9th level, has long been different from ordinary people in terms of hearing and vision. Rumbling. Just after running towards the top of the mountain for a short distance, there was a sudden explosion of thunder, and then a big raindrop fell. David's figure was not hindered by the rain. He was enveloped in a layer of light mist. Before the rain fell on David's body, it suddenly evaporated and could not wet David's clothes at all. When he was about to reach the top of the mountain, David saw the sentry on the road. Someone had already set up a cordon. David knew that someone must have died in Lemingguan, but David did not know who died. The speed accelerated again. David bypassed the sentry post and went directly to the top of the mountain. As soon as he reached the top of the mountain, David was stunned by the rich bloody smell. In this majestic rainy weather, the bloody smell was still so strong, it can be seen that there must be a lot of people dead here. Looking at the rain under my feet, it all turned red, then gathered together and flowed down the mountain. Outside Leming, dozens of detectives in raincoats were busy. When they saw David, who was approaching suddenly, a detective immediately stopped him. "Who are you? You are not allowed to approach here. Get out of the way." At this time, two figures hurried out of the thunder view. These two people are Ling Zhenchuan and Ji Yuwenchen. After seeing David, both of them respectfully shouted, "Mr. Chen." Several detectives who stopped David showed a bit of consternation, seeing that David was only in his early 20s, so young, he could make the leader of the city and the senior officials who retired from the provincial government so polite. David nodded slightly, saying hello, and then followed Ji Yuwenchen and Ling Zhenchuan into the Leming sect. As soon as I walked into Lemingguan, I saw more than 10 corpses lying around in the yard. These corpses are all Taoist boys of Lemingguan, and they are true disciples of Taoist priests. Most of David knew it. After all, David came to Lemingguan to absorb the cold air for Xiaoru, and he also had an intersection with these Taoist boys. Slowly squatting down, David carefully looked at the wounds on Daotong's body. All of them died from crushed throat bones. There were 5 blood holes on each Daotong's neck, which were constantly flowing out with blood. "What's wrong with Taoist master?" David asked. "It's inside," Ji Yuwenchen said, and hurriedly led David into the Taoist sect. As soon as he walked into the main hall, he saw the righteous Taoist fell on the ground of the main hall, his eyes were wide open, and his body was already stiff. Chapter 323. It is true that he will die without resting his eyes. I tried to make him close his eyes, but there is no way. Ji Yuwenchen did not dare to look directly at Taoist master, and said with a sad face. David squatted down slowly, and gently stroked the face of the righteous leader with one hand. "The righteous leader, don't worry, I will definitely avenge your revenge for you." When David took his hand away, his eyes were closed. David got up and glanced at the hall. He didn't see the bodies of other people, so he asked, "Where's Xiaoru, the daughter of Taoist master?" Ji Yuwenchen shook his head, but Ling Zhenchuan opened his mouth and said, "I don't know where we are going. After we got the news, we sealed off the scene, and there was no one else. The scene is what it is now, and no one moved." "Who is it?" "He is so vicious and vicious that he even slaughtered the Taoist sect." Ji Yuwenchen gritted his teeth. A person had already flashed in David's mind at this time, but there was no evidence at this time, and David did not dare to comment. "Don't worry, Ji Yu, I have asked the Criminal Investigation Department to investigate closely. I believe I will soon find out who the murderer is." Ling Zhenchuan also said with a look of grief and indignation. "Mayor Ling, let everyone stop investigating this matter. There are some things that ordinary people can't investigate at all. Leave this to me." David knew that this must not be done by ordinary people. Ling Zhenchuan was stunned for a moment, and after glancing at David, he nodded. "Okay, I'll let all the investigators leave." As soon as Ling Zhenchuan finished speaking, there was a loud noise outside. David and the others rushed out in a hurry. As soon as they arrived at the entrance of the Taoist sect, they saw a Taoist Wu Wei who was wearing a Taoist robe and was soaked all over, arguing with the detective. "Let him in," David shouted sharply. Several detectives were stunned, but looking at Ling Zhenchuan beside David, they obediently moved away. Junior brother, junior brother." Taoist Wu Wei roared in pain and rushed towards the Taoist sect. David looked at Taoist Wu Wei's grief-stricken appearance, and his heart was filled with sorrow and grief. David and Ji Yuwenchen followed, while Ling Zhenchuan left some people to clean up the scene. The others let them go, and all of them were not allowed to tell what happened today. Junior brother, wake up, wake up." In the main hall, Taoist Wu Wei held the dead body of Taoist master and burst into tears. David and the others stood silently by the side, and no one spoke. At this time, any words of comfort would be futile. After crying for a long time, Taoist Wu Wei put down the dead body, with murderous intent flashing in his eyes, and gritted his teeth and said, "Old Zhuangzi, you and I are at odds. If I don't kill you, I swear I won't be a human." Hearing Taoist Wu Wei mentioning Taoist extinction, David was certain in his heart. He just thought of this Taoist extinction. He killed Liao Fei at that time and took the 7-star plate. Presumably the Taoist extinction will not give up. After all, it looks like a 7-star plate. Such treasures are rare in the world. However, David did not expect that this Taoist extinction was so cruel that he did not trouble himself, but directly slaughtered the entire Lamingguan. Wu Wei Taoist, how did you know it was the Taoist extinction? Gu Wenchen asked carefully. It was my traitor and junior brother who informed me, otherwise I wouldn't have come so quickly. We killed Liao Fei, and my traitor junior brother bewitched Taoist to kill the entire Lamingguan to avenge his disciple, and he informed him afterwards. I'm here to collect the corpse. Taoist Wu Wei gritted his teeth, and murderous aura burst out in his eyes. It's maddening, how can this be done by a monk? Ling Zhenchuan was also shocked when he heard it. Chapter 324. Then do you know where Xiaoru is? David asked. I was arrested and taken to Xiamingguan. After dealing with the funeral of my junior brother, I will go to save her. Taoist Wu Wei slowly picked up the dead body of Taoist master and prepared to go to the backyard to bury the body. David stretched out his hand and stopped the Taoist Wu Wei. Taoist, it is true that the Taoist will have their funeral. There is someone here to arrange. You take me to Xiamingguan now. I'm afraid that if I go too late, Xiaoru will be in danger. Taoist Wu Wei was stunned for a moment, then put down the dead body of Taoist and nodded and said, Okay, I'll take you there now. Ancient, Mayor Ling, I'll leave it to you here. David said to Gu Wenchen and Ling Zhenchuan. Mr. Chen, pay attention to safety. Gu Wenchen warned. David and Taoist Wu Wei set off. The vicious Ming sect is on a steep mountain. There are few people here, and there are very few people who know it, so no one will come to the vicious Ming sect to worship like the Lei Ming sect. Under the guidance of Taoist Wu Wei, David and the others arrived at the foot of the mountain until dawn. Looking at the towering peaks and the lush jungle, David's eyes were full of murderous intent. Due to the heavy rain last night, the entire mountain peak was wrapped in damp mist at this time. David and Taoist Wu Wei plunged into the mist, and soon disappeared. At this time, in the fierce underworld sect, several fierce-faced Taoist boys were lazily sweeping the Taoist sect. These Taoist boys were all vicious murderers. They were hunted down and hid here, and became a Taoist boy. And in the hall, there is a person wearing a Taoist robe. This person is Xuanjizi, the current master of Fierce Mingguan. The traitor in the mouth of Wu Wei Taoist is this person, and Liao Fei is his apprentice. It was supposed to be the time to preach in the early morning, but this Xuanjizi was absent-minded, pricked up his ears and secretly listened to the movement behind the hall. In the room at the back of the main hall, the beard-faced Taoist Mie Xie, who had already passed his old age, looked at Xiaoru on the bed with a stern look. Xiaoru shrank her body and looked at the savage-like weirdo in front of her with horror in her eyes. She had just eaten last night and was about to rest when she suddenly heard the sound of fighting outside. After she opened the door, she was knocked unconscious. When she woke up, she found that she was already here. Tisk tisk tisk. The skin is as white as snow, and even the blood vessels on the body can be clearly seen. It is indeed the body of ice crystals. Losing the 7-star plate, but getting such a treasure, it is worth it, it is worth it. Taoist Shuai greedily looked at Xiaoru on the bed, his face full of excitement. You, who are you? Why did you arrest me? Xiaoru asked Taoist extinction in fear. Little baby, don't be afraid, I won't kill you, you will live with me obediently in the future. If you cultivate your body of ice crystals with me, I will be able to live 100 years longer. Taoist Shuai licked his lips, and the lustful light in his eyes made Xiaoru move her body back desperately. You, don't come here, otherwise my dad won't let you go, he will definitely kill you. At this time, Xiaoru still doesn't know the news that Taoist master is dead. Your dad killed me. Ha 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 ha, a joke, a big joke. Taoist Shuai suddenly looked up and laughed loudly. Your dad is already a corpse now, what did he use to kill me? With his soul. Even if his soul dares to find me, I can make his soul fly away. When Xiaoru heard this, her whole body was shocked. You killed my dad. If I didn't kill that old thing, how could I bring you here? Taoist extinction smiled coldly. Hearing this, Xiaoru was like a fool, and then her eyes burst into anger. I killed you, I want to kill you. Chapter 325. There was no fear on Xiaoru's face, and her eyes were full of anger, and she rushed towards Taoist extinction. It's a pity that she is just an ordinary girl now. Where is the opponent of Taoist Mie Xie? And she was directly slapped away by Taoist Mie Xie. If you want to kill me, then you should be obedient, serve me well, and cultivate with me. Maybe you can find a chance to kill me. After Taoist Shuai finished speaking, a hungry tiger rushed towards Xiaoru. Beast, let me go. Xiaoru struggled desperately. Stab. A large piece of Xiaoru's clothes was ripped off. At the same time, David and Taoist Wu Wei ran towards the mountain quickly. David was extremely fast, Taoist Wu Wei could barely follow behind. Soon, the fierce Ming sect appeared in front of the two of them. Looking at the somewhat dilapidated fierce Ming sect, David was a little puzzled. How could there still be people in such a Taoist sect? Mr. Chen, this Taoist sect is an abandoned Taoist sect. Later, it was occupied by the Taoist extermination, and it was named Fierce Ming sect. The Taoists here are all heinous villains who hid here in order to avoid being hunted down. Taoist Wu Wei explained with David. David nodded, that is to say, everyone in this Taoist sect was killed, and there was no problem. When David followed Wu Wei Taoist to the door of the Taoist sect, the few Taoist boys who had swept the floor were all stunned. Because of their Taoism, there will be no strangers at all. There are two strangers suddenly, so all the Taoists are vigilant. Who are you two? Why did you come to our vicious nether view? A Taoist boy pointed at David and Wu Wei Taoist with a broom. The voice of Dao Dong was heard by Xuanjizi in the hall, so he rushed out immediately. When he saw Taoist Wu Wei, he immediately showed a sneer. Senior brother, I didn't expect you to come so soon. Have you taken care of the funeral of the true junior brother? Xuanjizi, you traitor, I must kill you today. After Taoist Wu Wei saw Xuanjizi, he was instantly furious, and he was about to rush towards Xuanjizi. But he was stopped by David, then looked at Xuanjizi and said, Where's Xiaoru, where are you taking her? The reason why David did not let Taoist Wu Wei did was to ask Xiaoru's whereabouts first. Xuanjizi glanced at David, who are you? A mere junior, do you have the right to speak? Seeing that David was young, Xuanjizi regarded him as a disciple of Taoist Wu Wei. David took out the 7-star disc directly from his arms and said, I killed your disciple Liao Fei, and I took the 7-star disc, so if you want to avenge your disciple, you can come to me. Seeing the 7-star plate in David's hand, Xuanjizi's eyes suddenly burned with anger. It turns out that my apprentice was killed by you, then today I will ask you to bury him with him. A murderous aura erupted from Xuanjizi's body, and he waved his hand, give it to me, kill this guy, and take back the 7-star plate. When a few Taoist boys heard it, they all suddenly turned ugly and rushed towards David. David's eyes were full of disdain, and he was about to wave his hands to dismiss these Daodong boys, but suddenly heard a girl's exclamation. Although the voice was not loud, David could still hear it clearly. Extraordinary. The voice came from behind the main hall. David knew that it must be Xiaoru's voice, and Xiaoru was in danger again. Taoist Wu Wei, stop them, I'll save Xiaoru. After David finished speaking, the whole body disappeared in a flash and rushed towards the hall. Stop him. Xuanjizi shouted angrily, trying to stop David. Traitor, today I will clear the portal. Taoist Wu Wei waved the dust in his hand and attacked Xuanjizi. Xuanjizi fought with Taoist Wu Wei, while David rushed into the hall and kicked open the wooden door of the room behind the hall with a kick. Chapter 326. Wow. The wooden door shattered in response, and David saw a lousy old man with a full beard pressing on Xiaoru's body. At this moment, Xiaoru only had a little underwear left on her body. Hearing the movement, Taoist Shuai hurriedly got up and turned around, and saw that it turned out to be a strange young man. His brows were wrinkled. Brother Chen, save me, save me. Xiaoru also saw David at this time, desperately called for help, and covered her body with a quilt. Boy, who are you? Do you know the consequences of breaking into my vicious nether sect? Taoist Extinction said with a look of anger. I'm the one who killed your disciple and grandson and took your 7-star plate. If you have the ability, come and take it away. David showed the 7-star plate and said with a killing intent. Seeing the 7-star plate, Taoist Mie Xia's eyes lit up. Good boy, you have the courage, and you dare to take the initiative to bring it to your door, then today Pindao will accept you. After finishing speaking, the Taoist robe on Taoist Mie Xia was automatic without wind, and then he punched David with a punch. David's eyes glowed with cold light, and he stared at Taoist Shuiguang, his murderous aura rising to the extreme. You demon, today I'm going to do it for the sky. After David finished speaking, the surging spiritual power surged in his dantian, and then gathered on David's fist. At this moment, David's fist seemed to be wrapped in a layer of light. Taoist Miju was stunned for a moment, and a bit of surprise flashed in his eyes, but the fist he swiped did not stop, but increased his internal strength again. Bang! After a deafening sound, the whole room was swept away by the strong wind. Ding ding dang. Taoist Shuai took 3 steps backwards in a row, and only then did he stabilize his body, and his entire arm was numb. And David stood still with a cold expression on his face. A flash of horror flashed in Taoist Shui's eyes. He did not expect David to be so young, to have such terrifying strength. Are you a cultivator? Taoist Shuian narrowed his eyes. No wonder you have the guts to come up. Taoist Shuai saw David's identity, and it seemed that he had dealt with monks. David was also a little surprised when Taoist Mie saw his identity at a glance. At the same time, he was also a little surprised by Taoist Mie's strength. If David hadn't been promoted to the 9th level of Qi practice, it might not be who would win this punch. Now that you know, why don't you kneel down and die quickly? David said indifferently. Ha ha ha, young man, you are too arrogant. Suddenly, Taoist Mie Xie laughed. It's just a little cultivator, Pindao just sucked your skills and used it for me. Taoist Shuai laughed, suddenly jumped up, spread his hands, turned into eagle claws, and grabbed towards David. David clasped his backhand and directly clasped Taoist Mie Xie's wrist, but that Taoist Mie didn't resist, and seemed to have David clasped his wrist on purpose. Taoist Shuai also clasped David's wrist with his backhand, and the two held each other like this, and then used their internal strength to compete. Taoist Shuai suddenly raised the corner of his mouth, revealing a sneer of success, and then David felt that the spiritual power in his dantian was like a tsunami, desperately rushing towards his arm. After these strands of spiritual power poured into his arm, they were directly sucked into his body by the Taoist Mie Xie. This time, David's face changed greatly. He didn't expect this Taoist extinction to have such a stunt. Ha ha ha, seeing how young you are, your spiritual power is so surging, this time I'm going to enjoy it. Taoist Shuai laughed, his face full of pride. Feeling the constant loss of his body's spiritual power, David thought, since his concentration technique can absorb all things to cultivate, can it also absorb energy from other people? Chapter 327. Thinking of this, David turned to the concentration technique, and soon, the spiritual power that was continuously draining out was stopped. Immediately afterwards, David's dantian formed a huge vortex and began to absorb energy desperately towards Taoist extinction. Taoist Shuai suddenly felt that something was wrong, and then his face changed greatly, and his eyes showed horror. You, how did you know my star-sucking Dafa? Taoist extinction said with a look of surprise. Feeling the constant loss of energy in his body, Taoist Mie Xie desperately wanted to break free, but at this time David was like a huge magnet, sucking him firmly, unable to move at all. The skin on Taoist Shui's body began to age rapidly, and the whole person fell into extreme panic. After a full 10 minutes, the Taoist extinction finally had only a pair of skins left, only his eyes were still wide open in horror, and the rest of his body had already shrunk together. As soon as David let go, Taoist Mie Xie knew that he had fallen to the ground, and he could no longer see his humanity. At the end of his death, Taoist Mie Xie could no longer make a sound. Feeling the changes in his body, David was amazed. This time his strength has improved a lot. He really did not expect that the heart condensation art has such a wonderful effect. David had never thought of it before. Chen, brother Chen. Xiaoru timidly called out to David. David woke up from his excitement at this time, and hurriedly took off his jacket and put it on Xiaoru. When David helped Xiaoru out of the hall, Taoist Wu Wei was still fighting with Xuanjizi. The two were already sweating profusely, and the bodies of those Daodong boys were still lying on the ground. Now the two of them are estimated to have reached the limit, and every move and style feels very difficult, but they are gritted against each other. No one is slack, because they all know that any laxity and carelessness may be fatal. Master. Seeing Taoist Wu Wei, Xiaoru suddenly shouted, and her eyes burst out. Her father died, and now only Taoist Wu Wei is her relatives. Hearing Xiaoru calling out to him, Taoist Wu Wei turned his head to look, and found that Xiaoru was not in serious trouble, and he was overjoyed. And when Xuanjizi saw David and Xiaoru standing together, he had a bad premonition in his heart. After seeing the Taoist Wu Wei distracted, Xuanjizi stabbed the Taoist Wu Wei with a sword and was about to escape. Taoist Wu Wei has already waved the whisk in his hand towards Xuanjizi, but it is already a step too late. Ah! Seeing that Xuanjizi's sword was about to pierce Wu Wei Taoist's chest, Xiaoru screamed in fright. David's eyes narrowed, and with a flick of his fingers, a white light flashed and hit directly on Xuanjizi's arm. A blood hole appeared, and the sword in Xuanjizi's hand also fell to the ground. Taoist Wu Wei's whisk has also been swiped, and slapped hard on Xuanjizi's head. Xuanjizi spat out a mouthful of blood and fell heavily to the ground, unable to get up now. Traitor, I see how you can escape. Looking at Xuanjizi, who was spouting blood, Taoist Wu Wei shouted angrily. Teacher, senior brother, forgive me, I was wrong, it was all the Taoist who persecuted me, and it was he who persecuted me, please don't kill me, don't kill me. Lying on the ground, Xuanjizi desperately followed the Taoist Wu Wei to beg for mercy, with a strong desire to survive. People like you, even if you die, you have to go to H3LL, so how can you live in this world? After Taoist Wu Wei finished speaking, he kicked Xuanjizi's head fiercely. Xuanjizi's head was kicked out, and he couldn't die directly. Taoist Wu Wei also seemed to have all his strength taken away in an instant, and he slumped on the ground. Chapter 328. Master. Xiaoru ran over and hugged Wu Wei Taoist tightly. Xiaoru, are you alright? Taoist Wu Wei asked with concern. I'm fine, but my dad he. Speaking of her father, Xiaoru's tears flowed out again. Hey. Taoist Wu Wei sighed. David stepped forward and pulled Wu Wei Taoist up, and a spiritual power was instantly injected into Wu Wei Taoist's body, which made him feel strong. Thank you, Mr. Chen, great kindness and great virtue, I will never forget. Taoist Wu Wei said that he was going to kneel to David, and that Xiaoru also knelt down with him. David put his hands together, and did not let the two kneel down, and hurriedly said, Wu Wei Taoist is polite, meeting his fate, not to mention Xiaoru has also helped me a lot. If it wasn't for Xiaoru's physique, how could David's cultivation speed be so fast? The chill in Xiaoru's body accelerated David's cultivation a lot. The three people went down the mountain and returned to the Thunder Sect. At this time, the Thunder Sect had already been cleaned up, and there was no one left. Only in the open space behind the main hall, more than 10 graves were piled up. Looking at the empty hall, looking at the cold graves behind, Xiaoru burst into tears. You must know that all of her brothers and sisters are buried here. Some of the brothers watched her grow up and took great care of her, but now they are all corpses. In front of the largest tomb, Xiaoru was trembling all over, and suddenly lay on the tomb, clawing with both hands. Dad, come out, I'm Xiaoru, come out and see me. Xiaoru scratched with her hands desperately, and soon her fingers were bleeding. Taoist Wu Wei had red eyes and wanted to step forward to stop it, but was stopped by David. He knew that at this time, Xiaoru needed to vent her feelings. It took more than half an hour for Xiaoru to regain her calm, and she could be regarded as accepting the reality. Taoist Wu Wei, Xiaoru, what are you going to do next? If you need a place to live, I can arrange it for you in Horrendal. Now Lei Mingguan is afraid that he can't live here, and Xiaoru is homeless by himself, so David wants to ask what the two of them plan to do. Taoist Wu Wei did not speak, but looked at Xiaoru with pity. Xiaoru also looked at Taoist Wu Wei, and then said, I am now a relative of my uncle. I will follow me wherever my uncle goes. Mr. Chen, don't bother you anymore. I'll take Xiaoru to travel around. With me, I won't hurt her again. Seeing that Xiaoru was willing to follow her, Taoist Wu Wei said. Okay, since that's the case, then I won't force it. David said, and took out the 7-star plate. Xiaoru, you bring the 7-star plate, and when your cold poison strikes, use the 7-star plate to protect yourself. The cold poison in your body can be sucked out, as long as you don't go to places where the yin and cold qi is particularly heavy, the yin and cold qi in your body will not recur in a short time. David stuffed the 7-star plate into Xiaoru's hand. Brother Chen, this is your treasure, I can't have it. Xiaoru knew that this 7-star plate was a treasure, and David killed that Liao Fei for this 7-star plate. What kind of treasure is not treasure? It is useless to me, but on you, it may save your life. If you have a chance to see you again, when I am strong enough, I will give you a big chance. David smiled slightly and stroked Xiaoru's head gently. Xiaoru didn't speak, but silently held the 7-star pan in her arms. After coming down from the mountain, the three parted ways. Looking at Taoist Wu Wei and Xiaoru's back, David didn't know that his decision to give the 7-star plate to Xiaoru made him escape from death several times in the future. Chapter 329. Yeonchang Hotel. Sonia looked at Lin Tianyu strangely and asked, Lin Tianyu, tell me the truth, what did David do? Miss Su, I really don't know. Mr. Chen said he was in a hurry and left. Lin Tianyu said helplessly. I left last night, and I haven't come back yet. I can't get through on the phone. Will something happen? Sonia's face is full of worry. I don't think he is looking for a little lover, right? There is no single one for such a handsome and rich man. Ji Yufei on the side laughed wickedly. Yufei, don't talk nonsense, I don't think David is that kind of person. At this time, Ji Yuyao patted Ji Yufei lightly to prevent her from talking nonsense. At this time, Ji Yuyao's attitude towards David had undergone a 180-degree change. A man with such strength, but always hidden, would not easily fall under a woman's pomegranate skirt. I don't think Brother David would do such a thing. He Zigang didn't believe it either. I trust David, I'm just worried that he will be in danger. Sonia is not worried that David will find a little lover, but is worried that David is in danger. Okay, maybe Brother David will call back in a while, let's go eat. He Zigang said. A few people walked out of the bar and were going to find a restaurant to eat. When walking on the street, Lin Tianyu frowned slightly, and a feeling of extreme danger made his heart beat faster. Miss Su, we may be being followed, you go first, don't look back. Lin Tianyu whispered in Sonia's ear. Sonia was shocked, and after nodding her head, she hurriedly led Ji Yufei and the others to speed up. Lin Tianyu grabbed one hand on his belt, and when he turned around suddenly, he saw 3 people walking towards him with a sneer on their faces. Seeing that they were discovered by Lin Tianyu, the 3 of them did not panic. Who are you? Why are you following us? Lin Tianyu said solemnly. What? As soon as Lin Tianyu finished speaking, he heard an exclamation. It was Sonia's voice. Looking hurriedly, Lin Tianyu found that Sonia and the others also had 3 men with ferocious faces in front of them, directly blocking their way. He Zigang was trembling, but he still stood in front of Sonia and the 3 girls, kept retreating, and finally stood with Lin Tianyu. Are you David? One of them looked at He Zigang and asked. This person was Wei Tao's uncle Zhang Wenji. He had never met David, so he saw that He Zigang was young after all, so he asked He Zigang. I don't. What are you doing with Mr. Chen? Lin Tianyu asked directly without waiting for He Zigang to finish speaking. Of course he was killed, and Wei Tao's leg was abolished. Can he still live? Zhang Wenji said with a gloomy expression. You are sent by the Wei family. Lin Tianyu tensed his nerves when he heard this, and pulled out his belt, ready to act at any time. You're that Lin Tianyu, right? I'm thinking of you as a hero, it's none of your business here, get out of here. Zhang Wenji waved at Lin Tianyu. HMPH, arrogant. After Lin Tianyu finished speaking, he instantly waved the belt in his hand towards Zhang Wenji. At this time, it was time to strike first. The steel belt whistled and waved towards Zhang Wenji, but Zhang Wenji didn't dodge. Lin Tianyu was shocked, he only felt a huge force pulling him and flying towards Zhang Wenji. Zhang Wenji suddenly punched out, directly hitting Lin Tianyu's abdomen. Buff. Lin Tianyu spurted out a mouthful of blood, and broke several ribs in an instant. Chapter 330. HMPH, the underground emperor in Horrendal is just like that. Zhang Wenji snorted coldly. Lin Tianyu fell to the ground, the severe pain made his face grim, he wanted to get up, but he couldn't use his strength at all. Are you David? After Zhang Wenji defeated Lin Tianyu, he took a step towards He Zigang and asked. He Zigang was stunned at this time. He knew what Lin Tianyu's strength was, but now he was crippled by the opponent's punch, and he couldn't even get up. This frightened He Zigang. Seeing He Zigang so frightened, Zhang Wenji frowned slightly, but he heard Wei Dao say that David is very powerful, how could he be frightened like this as soon as they met? If it is this cowardly, I am afraid that it will not be my turn to take action, and the old housekeeper of the Wei family, Fu Bo, will not die. Aren't you David? Zhang Wenji asked again suspiciously. No, not. He Zigang shook his head desperately. Where is David? Zhang Wenji took 2 steps towards He Zigang, and the 2 almost face to face. Zhang Wenji looked directly at He Zigang with murderous eyes, frightened He Zigang to death, and did not dare to follow Zhang Wenji to look at him. I don't know, he left Yeonchang. He Zigang trembled and said stutteringly. Leave. Zhang Wenji frowned slightly, then turned to look at Sonia and the 3 girls, and asked coldly, You 3, who is Sonia? The 3 girls' eyes were full of horror, and no one dared to speak when they looked at Zhang Wenji. They knew in their hearts why Zhang Wenji was looking for Sonia. Don't tell me. If you don't tell me, I will strip the 3 of you naked and throw them on the street for everyone to see. Zhang Wenji's eyes widened, and the anger on his body was burning. The 3 of them, Sonia, hugged each other tightly, wanting to rely on each other to give themselves a little sense of security, but now none of the 3 of them can give anyone a sense of security. A big man, what kind of skill is it to bully a girl? Come to me, come to me. Lin Tianyu fell to the ground, looked at Sonia and the others, who were scared, and shouted angrily. Zhang Wenji ignored Lin Tianyu, but gave a wink to several of his subordinates, and several of his subordinates walked in front of Lin Tianyu knowingly, punching and kicking at Lin Tianyu. Seeing how badly Lin Tianyu was beaten, Sonia and the 3 girls turned pale. I'm asking, who are you, Sonia? I only give you 3 seconds to think about it now, or I'll take you all away. Zhang Wenji frightened Sonia and the others with a ferocious expression, and began to count down. 3, 2, 1. At this moment, Sonia gritted her teeth and wanted to stand out. At this time, she didn't want to implicate Ji Yufei and Ji Yao. But before Sonia could speak, Ji Yao stood out. My name is Sonia Su. Although Ji Yao's face was still filled with fear, her eyes were full of determination. Sister. Sonia didn't expect that Ji Yao actually stood up for her. Zhang Wenji glanced at Ji Yao and smiled coldly. No wonder Wei Dao likes you, you really look good. At this time, when He Zigang saw that Ji Yao was actually standing out, the whole person turned pale in shock, and he opened his mouth to call Ji Yao, but was stopped by Ji Yao's look. At this time, people are all selfish. He Zigang doesn't want Ji Yao to take risks. Ji Yao is his girlfriend. If he is taken away, he can imagine what will happen with his toes. But looking at Ji Yao's eyes, He Zigang hesitated, but in the end he couldn't shout. Chapter 321. The remaining three Wei family masters were so frightened that they hurriedly knelt on the ground, their bodies shaking like sieves.